All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast real estate tip. And today I'm here to talk to you about motivation, and specifically for those of you that are lacking motivation inside your real estate business. Now, everything I'm going to talk to you about here today really applies to motivation in any aspect of your life, but this is a real estate podcast, so I'm going to speak a little bit more specific to this about how this can be impacted and how we can fix this issue immediately inside our real estate businesses. And look, this is one of the most common things I get reached out to for assistance on, for help on, right? I get common questions of like, Josh, man, I lost my motivation, or I'll hear other words like, oh, I lost my mojo, whatever. Or man, I just don't feel motivated. How do I become motivated? How do I get that motivation back? So this is what I want to make sure to help you get dialed in immediately and get this fixed immediately inside your life, inside your real estate business. And what I'm going to walk you through here may not necessarily be what you're expecting, but it's what I truly believe that you need to hear, what we all need to hear, and how we need to operate. So real quick, before I jump into the 4 different steps I'm going to walk you through to be able to fix this problem immediately inside your real estate business and inside your life, make sure to check out gsdmode.com for more additional free resources, more additional free training. And also, I highly encourage all of you, if you're a real estate agent, team leader, or broker owner, to schedule a 100% free strategy Zoom coaching call with me personally. It's going to be you and I jumping on this Zoom call for a 60-minute call. We're going to break down where your business is at, what your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals and visions are for your real estate business, what your biggest struggles are, what you're currently doing. And then based on all of that information, I'm going to be able to help map out the best, most effective strategy to get you from where you're at to where it is that you want to go inside your real estate business. So, and I don't care if you're individual agent, team leader, broker owner, maybe you're struggling. Look, maybe you're crushing it and doing great. You just want a second set of eyes to see if there's any areas of improvement. Here to help and support you in any way I possibly can. And if that's something you want to take advantage of, you can go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, or wherever you're watching or listening to this. If you just go into the show notes or the description below, you'll be able to see a link to go out there and do that. Okay, so again, back to the topic at hand of how do we fix this whole motivation issue? And again, I get it, man. It's like, look, if we could be motivated all the time, well, we're just feeling great, like we're excited, we want to do the work. But what I want you to understand is that success, true success and long-lasting success is only reserved for the committed. Now, what's the difference between those that are committed versus those that are interested? Those that are interested only show up when it's easy, only show up and do the work when it's convenient, right? So when they're have that feeling of motivation, right? That's when they do the work. Where in order to create success, as I mentioned a moment ago, you've got to be truly committed. And commitment is doing the work that must be done to make your goals a reality, regardless of your emotional state. So motivation is not something that's reliable. We need to learn, how do we show up? How do we execute? How do we do the work regardless of what our motivational level is? And this is the true fix. So I know that so many people are like, hey, dude, I just want to be in that constant state of motivation all the time. But now you're chasing something that just does not exist. It's kind of like when I have people that will come to me and say, oh, my goal is just to be happy. Look, that is a stupid goal. And I get it when people say that, but the reality is there's many different emotions. What's there? 8 different core emotions. You're going to have happiness, you're going to have sadness, you're going to have anger, you're going to have jealous. Like is a healthy, emotionally regulated human being, you're going to experience all of these different emotions. And the only reason that you experience happiness is because you also experience sadness. Yeah, right? You experience pleasure because you also experience pain. If pleasure was just the only state we ever experienced, well, no longer would that then bring us pleasure. So same thing here when it comes to motivation. It's like we got to learn we go out there and execute, show up regardless, do the work regardless of whatever our emotional state is, regardless of our emotional our motivation level. And here's the cool thing about this is, when you learn to be able to take action regardless of your motivation state or your emotional state, what follows action is motivation in most cases. So like, here's an example. This morning, alarm goes off at 4 a.m., got to get up, work out. Sunday morning, like, dude, I don't want to pretty much never when my alarm goes off do I want to get out of bed. I mean, maybe if I were to calculate this and track this, I don't track it, I don't pay attention to it because, again, I could care less about if I'm motivated or not, if I feel good or not, if I'm happy or if I'm sad, depressed. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to execute regardless of the state that I'm feeling, because I also get an understand of, okay, to be a mature adult, it's like who operates off of emotions? Toddlers. Okay, well, if I want to create mature adult success, okay, I got to operate like a mature adult, which means I don't let emotions control my actions or my state. So almost never do I wake up motivated, but I got to get up regardless. And then, okay, first thing I do when I wake up, I get up, I eat, and then I go work out. Okay, again, 4 a.m. when I'm working out at that time, dude, like I'm not motivated when I start. Almost never am I like, oh yeah, I'm so excited to work out at this time and get going. But here's what happens. It's about 10 minutes into that working out. Okay, now I start feeling good. My body starts feeling good. The blood starts flowing. I got a little of a pump going on. And the more action that I'm taking in there, the more motivated. And I don't want to say there's certain days where I'm like, dude, I'm not motivated at all. But most times, once I force myself to take action, then I get motivated. Same thing with me getting in the office this morning. I had to get in the office by 8 a.m. this morning, bunch of appointments, and I've got a 12-hour workday on this Sunday. Just happened to, not every Sunday's that way for me, but it just happened to be that way today. So I'm like, shit, dude, I don't want to go in the office. I don't want to do all of this stuff. A lot of times when I'm creating this podcast, like I'm like, oh, dude, I don't want to, right? It's, but once I get into it, then I start to enjoy it. Then the motivation comes. So what typically follows action is then more motivation. And again, not always. I don't want to set a false precedence here. Like it doesn't always happen. You got to learn to be able to execute regardless. So this is the key though, is how do we get ourselves to be disciplined to execute regardless of whatever that state is. Because here's the thing is, I can promise you this, if you learn this, you're going to be fulfilled. Because it's the only way your goals will become a reality. It's the only way that you're going to be able to look in the mirror and be proud of the person that you see, because you're making shit happen. You're getting shit done. You're making your goals a reality. In order to do that, you've got to learn how to operate in this manner that I'm talking about here today. So how do we go out there and ensure that we are executing and showing up and taking those actions regardless of our emotional state, regardless of our motivation level? Okay, step number 1 on this, and I got 4 things I'm going to walk you through here. So step number 1, and all of these are absolutely crucial. And this is how I've also found that, okay, you can also show up and execute and be extremely disciplined regardless of willpower based on these 4 things. Okay, so step number 1 is to get extreme clarity on what you want, why it's important to you. It's really important, not just to have clarity on what you want, but you got to have clarity on what you want, why you want it, and why it's important to you, because then that gives you the goal, but then the reason and or purpose for the goal. And it doesn't need to be a monumental, crazy, insane, reason, purpose for the thing. It could just be because, you always want to make it happen. Maybe it just make you feel good. Maybe it just allow you to look in the mirror and be proud of who you see. It's got to be important to you, right? So, okay, you got extreme clarity on what you want, why it's important to you. So now you are sold on the goal that you've set for yourself in any aspect of your life. So let's just say you want to close 200 grand in the next, 12 months inside your real estate business, whatever. But you want to invest that time to be, okay, how's that going to impact your life? What differences is that going to make? Why is that really important to you? Because in life, we don't hit our wants, we hit our musts. So until you make that goal an absolute must for you to go out there and make a reality in your life, we typically don't hit it. In life, we typically just hit our musts. We don't hit our actual wants, right? So get clarity on what you want, why it's important to you. Step number 2 then is you invest the time to identify the best proven plan to get you from where you're at to where it is that you want to go. Cool thing about this, dude, is my guess is for any of you watching and listening to this, anything that you or I want to go out there and create, somebody else has already done. It's not like we're Elon Musk trying to revolutionize interstellar space travel to save the human species. I don't know anybody. I don't know Elon. I don't know anybody with goals that are insane like that, trying to get us to freaking Mars, whatever. It's next level crap. I mean, at least for myself and pretty much everybody I've ever met, or that I hang out, spend time with, what they're looking to accomplish, somebody else has already went from the space where they're at to making their goals a reality. So we want to then invest the time to go out there and make sure that we got the best, right, proven plan to get us from where we're at to where we want to go. The reason why these 2 things are so important is you got to be sold on your goals, And then you got to be sold on the execution plan to make your goals a reality. Because if you're not sold on both of those things, okay, typically you're not going to force yourself to do the action. But if it's like, okay, if I know exactly what I want, why it's important to me, and then I'm sold on the plan. Like, hey, I know if I just execute on this plan for the period of time that I must execute on, like I know I'm going to make my goals a reality. I want to have that level of faith and confidence in the plan. And then I find that, okay, this takes us like 70% of the way there when it comes to, self-discipline and being self-disciplined. Because that's what this is really about, right? Like, how do we then become self-disciplined to take action when we're not reliant on emotions, motivation, external circumstances, right? But that doesn't take us all the way there. So step number 3 here is to rig your environment to make it as easy to win as possible and difficult as possible to lose. So this is where, again, like I said earlier, like I've had to learn, because I'm a weak human being with very limited willpower. So I've had to learn, okay, how do I become extremely self-disciplined even though I lack willpower? Like, look, dude, if I had an abundance of willpower, I wouldn't have allowed myself to get up to 300 pounds or almost 300 pounds and become morbidly obese. I wouldn't have allowed myself to become a freaking raging alcoholic. I wouldn't allow myself to become addicted to certain substances. Like, I've proven to myself over and over and over that, hey, I got weaknesses just like everybody else. Like I'm human. Sometimes I have willpower. A lot of times I don't have willpower. So how can I execute and how can I stay disciplined and have self-discipline even though I have limited amounts of willpower? So talked about the 2 parts already. Third part is making your environment as easy as possible to win and difficult as possible to lose. So this is where, like, I never beat myself up where it's like, oh, I'm just going to be stronger tomorrow. Because like for me, I've tried that. I've went down that path. Well, I just typically am not stronger tomorrow. So then from there, it's okay, how do I need to rig my environment through systems, through my physical environment to make it as easy as possible to make this thing happen and as difficult as possible to get distracted, to not be able to execute on this thing. And so much of success is through elimination. So always asking yourself, okay, what or whom do I need to eliminate so I can take the necessary action steps that I must take to make my goals a reality? So maybe you're like, hey, I got to be up early. I got to be up earlier to hit my goals. But then you're like, okay, well, man, I just don't find myself being able to get to bed sooner or at the time that I need to get the rest that I need to get up early. Okay, well, then we start chunking this down. Well, why aren't you going to bed on time? Well, maybe you're like, well, man, I start binge watch. I get in the bed. My evening routine is I turn on the TV and I tell myself, oh, I'm only going to watch one Netflix episode of the show. But then, man, they get that cliffhanger. Now you're on the second episode, third episode. Next thing you know, it's midnight. You binge 4 hours of freaking Netflix, and to get up at 4 a.m. Now you only got 4 hours of sleep. Can't operate on 4 hours of sleep. Okay, just remove the damn TV out of your damn room. Well, then, Josh, then I find myself just downloading the app on my phone. Okay, they just get rid of Netflix altogether, right? So how do I need to rig my environment to make it as easy as possible to win, difficult as possible to lose, so that way you can stay in action? Okay, the 4th component to this then is keep your perspective in check. So I see this becoming more and more of a challenge as we go forward, because life has gotten so insanely easy that the number one worst addiction that exists out there on the planet is the people's addiction to comfort. So if you look at this, rewind the clocks to at no point in human history, have we all had it so damn good where people are just, they don't want to get out of their comfort zone. They're like, for the first time really in human history, we're able to sit there and focus on being happy. For most of humanity, it was like, okay, dude, as a man, you went out there and worked the freaking fields, worked your ass off in the fields, otherwise your family would starve. There was different fears, different concerns. You didn't have time to kind of live in this, narcissistic era that we are able to be in. The reason why I say narcissistic era is I'm a big believer in that whole feeling sorry for ourselves. Oh, poor me. Oh, why me? Poor me. Whatever is a narcissistic trait. Yeah, right? We need to keep our perspective in check. So I don't know if this stat that I'm going to share with you is legitimate or not, but I just heard it this morning. I was listening to a podcast while I was working out. And on the podcast, they said there's been over 1 million deaths in the Ukraine war already. And on the podcast, they said that was on the Ukraine soldier side. So I don't know if that's total between Ukraine, Russia, whatever. And I'm not trying to make this political or about the war, but I'm sitting there thinking about that. I'm like, shit, man, 1 million deaths. Now, if you look at Afghanistan, for like that 20-year war that we had, like at least for me, like growing up pretty much my whole entire, I don't know, for 20 years of my life anyway, half of my life when that, Middle East war was taking place between Afghanistan and Iraq, it was like, okay, there was, 30,000 deaths during that point. And again, I'm probably way off on numbers here, but it's like, okay, there's been 1 million deaths in this war already. So then I'm thinking about that. I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I'm sitting here complaining in my own head, not to others, but in my own head about, I got to get up and I got to work out. I got to go into the office and do some work. Look, I'm in a nice office, cold water, warm coffee, air-conditioned environment, behind a computer, on some sales calls. I'm bitching, moaning, and whining about this work when you got 1 million people in a couple-year period of time that have died in this freaking war. Like, hey, man, I could be in a trench, fighting a war. I could, so when I say put it perspective in the check of like, dude, like sometimes it's easy to do. I find myself having to do this in my head all the time of like, shit, life is damn good. If the hardest part of my day is having to spend 2 hours picking up the phone, dialing the phone, and getting some no's and getting some rejections, and maybe once in a while somebody gets a little, I don't know, hardcore tells you F off, but I'm in an AC office, cold water, whatever. If that's the hardest part of my day, like life is pretty fucking epic. Life is pretty good. If I think that is so damn hard and I'm feeling sorry for myself from there, like, man, I got some perspective issues that I need to fix in my head because there's a lot of people out there. And again, if you look at any other time in human history, life has been so much damn harder for most people. So this is what I mean by keeping your perspective in check is like what you are actually doing that difficult, and then again, also when I talk about perspective of, okay, do you need motivation? Again, this is a perspective check that I have to find myself doing sometimes too of no, look, I'm a grown ass man, grown ass adult. If my goals are what matters most to me, I must execute and take action on those goals, action on the activities that I need to take action on to make my goals a reality, regardless of my emotional state, regardless of my motivational state. So I'm having to remind myself that. It's something that, like I struggle with too at times, but I make sure it doesn't, because as soon as I catch myself starting to veer this way, veer to the left, well, then I course correct myself immediately where it's like, hey, nope, look, I'm somebody that's committed. And this is where it just comes to an identity shift. It's like, oh man, I don't want to do this. Not today, not to whatever, right? Well, then I have to tell myself, hey, never sacrifice what you want most for what you want in the moment. I am somebody that's committed. Commitment means I must take the actions that I must take every single day, day in and day out, on the action steps I need to take action on to make my goal a reality, or goals a reality, regardless of my emotional state. Right? So I'm always having to, even in my own mind, shift my own perspective and go through perspective checks. And sometimes this is like multiple times a day. Sometimes it's multiple times an hour. But it becomes really important of being able to kind of shift our own, minds, because your minds will drift, right? So it's like, okay, your mindset starts to, your thoughts start to drift. Well, then we got to shift them back and keep them, focus on the right things. So that's what I mean by keeping your perspective in check. So just to recap these really quick. So clarity on what you want, why it's important to you. Make sure, number 2, that you have you've identified and taken the time to identify the best plan to get you from where you're at to where you want to go. Number 3, you rig your environment to make it as easy as possible to win and as difficult as possible to go out there and lose. And then number 4, man, you just keep your own perspective, your own mindset in check. So when you start finding yourself veering, feeling sorry for yourself or wanting to sacrifice what you want most for what you want in the moment, right? Just kind of have that internal conversation with yourself where you can recheck your own perspective, your own mind, and keep you on that right path. So these are the 4 things that I found that allow me and those that I've worked with, agents on my team, staff members, teammates, coaching clients, agent partners, to be able to execute regardless of their motivational state, regardless of their emotional state. And what I found to be the key to being consistent with the actions that we need to take to make our goals a reality. So I hope that you found this helpful. Again, make sure to check out gsdmode.com for more additional free resources, more additional free training. And look, if you have interest in having a conversation with me about a potential partnership in our real estate business, of what this could potentially look like and possibly look like if we were to partner together, I truly believe that we can do more together than we can apart. I'd love to have a 30-minute Zoom call conversation with you, talk to you about what this opportunity looks like. I'm looking for amazing agent, team leader, and broker owner partners from all over the U.S., North America. We're in multiple different countries as well. Love to have a 30-minute, 100% confidential, 100% zero pressure Zoom call with you, where we can, again, just walk you through, okay, here's what this opportunity looks like. Here's what we're doing. Here's what our mission is. Here's what we offer. Here's what this looks like. And look, at the end of the day, that call, if you feel that this is a better overall fit for you, great. If not, that's okay too. Like I said, everything I do, zero pressure. It's not going to push you, not going to pressure you. But if that's something that you have some interest in, go to www.gsdmode.com/partner. All right, guys, keep crushing it, keep kicking ass, and I will see you next time. Peace.